The massive crystal spires of the galactic nexus stretched into the star-filled void, each tower gleaming with the light of 1,000 civilizations. For 10,000 years, this place had been the center of power in the galaxy. Here, the Council of Advanced Species made decisions that affected billions of worlds. Elena Vasquez stepped out of her small transport ship and looked up at the towering structures. Her breath caught in her throat. She had seen pictures, but nothing had prepared her for the real thing. The human ambassador was a small figure against the enormous alien architecture that surrounded her. "Welcome to the Nexus," said her guide, a tall blue creature with 6 arms and eyes like black pearls. "I am Counselor Keith 9. Please follow me to the registration chamber." Elena walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls were made of some kind of living metal that changed colors as they passed. Other beings moved through the hallways, some floating, others walking on legs she couldn't count. Many stopped to stare at her. She could hear whispers in languages her translation device couldn't understand. "Is this your first time meeting other species?" Keth 9 asked without turning around. "Yes," Elena replied. "Humans have only had space travel for 50 years. We're still learning." Keth 9 made a sound that might have been laughter. 50 years, how young. They reached a vast chamber where hundreds of different creatures sat in floating seats arranged in a perfect circle. At the center stood a platform that rose from the floor like a mountain peak. Elena realized this was where she would have to speak. "The council will see you now," Keth 9 said. "Remember, you speak only when given permission. You answer only the questions asked. You do not interrupt." Elena nodded and walked to the platform. As she rose into the air, she felt thousands of eyes watching her. The chamber fell silent. A voice boomed from everywhere at once. "Human representative, you stand before the Council of Advanced Species. We have studied your kind. We know of your violent history, your primitive technology, your short lives." Elena looked around but couldn't tell who was speaking. The voice continued. "Your species has potential, but you are dangerous. You fight among yourselves. You damage your own world. You build weapons before you build wisdom." "Honorable Council," Elena began, "humans have made mistakes, but we have also learned from them. We have ended our worst conflicts. We work together now. We've come here seeking friendship and knowledge." A ripple of what sounded like laughter moved through the chamber. A new voice spoke, this one sharp and cold. "Friendship? You misunderstand your position here, human." A section of the chamber lit up, revealing a group of tall, silver beings with crystal growths covering their bodies. Their leader stepped forward. "I am High Commander Zix of the Zephyrian Empire. We have ruled the Eastern Spiral for 5,000 years. We know primitives when we see them." He gestured toward Elena with one crystal-tipped hand. "Your weapons are crude. Your ships are slow. Your minds are simple." Elena felt her face grow hot with anger, but she forced herself to stay calm. "We may be new to space, but humans are quick learners. We adapt. We solve problems in ways others might not." "Think of adaptation?" Zix made that laughing sound again. "We will show you adaptation. The Council has prepared a path for your species. You will follow it, or you will be removed." The chamber around Elena began to change. Images appeared in the air showing human cities, human ships, human faces. But the images started to shift. The cities became ordered and geometric. The ships grew sleek and uniform. The human faces became blank and peaceful. "This is your future," the booming voice said. "Under Council guidance, humanity will reach its proper potential. You will live in designated areas. You will work in approved occupations. Your aggressive tendencies will be corrected." Elena stared at the images in horror. The humans in the pictures looked empty, like dolls. "This isn't guidance," she said. "This is slavery." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. "You use harsh words for one so new to the galaxy," Zix said. "Perhaps you need time to understand. Other species have learned to appreciate council wisdom. What happened to the ones who didn't appreciate it? Elena asked. Silence filled the chamber. Then the images changed again. Elena saw dead worlds, empty cities, memorial markers for entire civilizations that no longer existed. They chose unwisely, the voice said simply. Elena's heart pounded, but she stood straighter. Humans won't be slaves. We won't give up our freedom or our world. We'll find our own way among the stars. Zix stepped closer to the platform. Your world sits in space that could serve better purposes. Your system has resources that advanced species could use more efficiently. Your people could contribute to galactic progress, in proper roles. You mean as workers for your empire, Elena said. Smart creatures learn their place quickly, Zix replied. Stupid ones do not survive the lesson. Elena looked around the chamber at the faces watching her. Some seemed sad, others afraid. A few looked angry but said nothing. She realized that many of these species had faced the same choice humans now faced. How many worlds have you taken? She asked. How many species have you guided into slavery? We prefer the term elevated, the booming voice said. Primitive species cannot govern themselves properly. They make poor choices. They waste resources. They create chaos. And you create order by destroying anyone who disagrees with you? We create peace, Zix said. His crystal growths began to glow brighter. Something your violent species knows little about. Elena thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who had chosen her to speak for them. She thought about human history. The wars, yes, but also the art, the music, the stories, the dreams. She thought about children playing in parks and old people telling jokes and young lovers holding hands under alien stars. We choose to find our own path, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The chamber erupted in noise. Some creatures cheered, others hissed or made sounds of anger. Zix's crystals blazed with white light. Silence, the booming voice commanded. The chamber fell quiet again. Human representative, you have heard the council's offer. We will give you time to consider. Return to your people. Discuss what you have learned. You have 30 of your days to provide an answer. I don't need 30 days, Elena said. Humans will never accept slavery, no matter what you call it. Then perhaps, Zix said softly, humans will not be given a choice. The platform began to lower. Elena kept her eyes on Zix until the floor came up to meet her feet. Cath9 appeared beside her. You have made a powerful enemy, the guide whispered as they walked toward the exit. I've made the only choice humans could make, Elena replied. As they left the chamber, Elena heard the discussion starting behind her. Voices rose and fell in dozens of languages. She didn't need a translator to know they were planning something terrible. But she also noticed something else. Some of the quieter voices sounded hopeful for the first time in years. Word would spread that someone had finally said no to the council. Elena smiled grimly as she walked back to her ship. The council thought they knew humans. They thought they knew what fear could do to a species facing extinction. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 3 weeks passed like days in Elena's small quarters on the Nexus. She had requested permission to stay while Earth considered the council's offer, but she knew her real job was to learn everything she could about their captors. Every morning, she watched ships arrive from across the galaxy. Most brought tribute, food, medals, artwork, sometimes people. She had learned that elevated species provided workers for the more advanced ones. The council called it cultural exchange. Elena called it what it was. Her guide, Cath9, visited her daily. The blue creature seemed different now, more nervous. Your people have sent a message, he said one morning. They want to negotiate terms. Elena shook her head. Humans don't negotiate for their freedom. We already have it. But the council offers knowledge, Cath9 said. Medical advances that could extend your lives. Technology that could make your world perfect. Peace that could last forever. At what cost? Cath9 was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke so softly, Elena had to lean closer to hear him. My people chose the Council's path 2,000 years ago. We thought we were wise. What happened? To them, we were changed. Made better, the Council said. Calmer, more logical. Keth Nine's 6 arms trembled slightly. We stopped making art. We stopped telling stories. We stopped dreaming of things that did not yet exist. We became perfect. Servants. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Is that what happened to all of them? Not all. Keth Nine glanced around to make sure they were alone. Some species fought. Their worlds are dark now, empty. The Council builds monuments there to remind others about the cost of defiance. How? Many worlds? Hundreds, maybe thousands. The galaxy is large, and the Council has been patient for a very long time. That evening, Elena was summoned back to the Great Chamber. This time, fewer creatures were present, but the air felt heavier with tension. High Commander Zix stood at the center of the chamber, his crystal growths pulsing with slow light. Human, representative, he began. Your people have had time to consider our generous offer. What is their answer? Elena walked to the platform and rose to face him. Earth's answer is the same as mine was. We will not accept slavery. Such a harsh word, Zix said. We prefer to think of it as guidance toward a better existence. Call it whatever you want. The answer is no. Zix's crystals began to glow brighter. Perhaps you need to understand the alternatives more clearly. The air above the chamber filled with images again. This time, Elena saw human colonies on distant worlds. Families living in simple homes, children playing in fields of alien grass, farmers working under foreign suns. These are your people on the outer worlds, Zix said. So far from Earth, so vulnerable. The images changed. The same colonies were now burning. Ships hung in the sky above them, shooting beams of energy downward. People ran screaming through streets that cracked and melted. This is what happens to colonies that cannot be protected, Zix said calmly. Elena's hands clenched into fists. Are you threatening our people? I am showing you reality. The galaxy is dangerous. Pirates attack weak settlements. Natural disasters destroy unprepared worlds. Diseases spread through populations that lack proper medical technology. The images kept changing. Elena saw human ships being torn apart by weapons she couldn't imagine. She saw planets covered in ice because their suns had been extinguished. She saw cities empty of life, filled only with silence and shadows. Of course, Zix continued, species under Council protection never face such problems. Our technology prevents disasters. Our fleets destroy pirates before they can attack. Our medicine stops disease before it spreads. For a price, Elena said. Everything has a price. The question is whether you pay it willingly or have it taken from you. A new voice spoke from the shadows around the chamber. This one was higher, more musical, but somehow more frightening than Zix's cold tones. Perhaps the human needs to see what cooperation looks like. A section of the chamber lit up, revealing creatures Elena had never seen before. They looked almost human, but their skin was pale blue and their eyes were larger. They moved with perfect synchronization, like dancers who had practiced the same routine for centuries. These are the Karani, the musical voice said. Once they were as chaotic as humans. They fought wars, created art, asked difficult questions. Now they serve a better purpose. One of the blue creatures stepped forward and spoke. Its voice was flat, emotionless. We are grateful to the Council for showing us the error of our ways. Before elevation, we wasted time on meaningless pursuits. Now we contribute efficiently to galactic prosperity. Elena stared at the creature. It looked healthy and well cared for, but something was missing. Its eyes held no curiosity, no humor, no hope. What did you do to them? She whispered. We helped them, Zix said. We removed the parts of their nature that caused suffering. No more war, no more crime, no more fear. They are perfectly content. They're not alive anymore, Elena said. They're just machines that look like people. They are peaceful. They are useful. They are happy. Elena looked at the Karani again. Are you happy? She asked the blue creature directly. It tilted its head slightly. Happiness is inefficient. We have purpose instead. Elena turned back to Zix. This is what you want to do to humans. This is what we offer humans. A chance to become more than you are. To join a galactic civilization instead of stumbling around in the dark by yourselves. We'll take the dark, thank you. Zix's crystals flared with angry light. You speak for 3 billion humans on dozens of worlds. Do you really think you have the right to condemn them all to destruction? I think I have the right to defend their freedom to choose for themselves. Choose what? War? Disease? Death? Look around you, human. See what we have built. Order, peace, prosperity for all who accept wisdom. Elena did look around. She saw the magnificent architecture, the advanced technology, the perfect organization. She also saw the fear in some faces, the emptiness in others, the careful way everyone moved when council members were present. You've built a prison, she said. A beautiful prison, but still a prison. Better a safe prison than a dangerous freedom, Zix replied. Humans don't think so. Then humans will learn differently. Zix stepped closer to the platform. We offer you one final chance. Accept council guidance willingly, and the transition will be gentle. Your people will be relocated to suitable worlds. Your aggressive tendencies will be treated with compassion. Your children will be educated properly. And if we refuse, then you will be treated as a threat to galactic peace. Council fleets will ensure that threat is neutralized. Elena felt the weight of 3 billion lives pressing down on her shoulders. She thought about the colonies she had seen burning in the images. She thought about Earth, green and blue and beautiful, turning dark and silent forever. Then she thought about the Karani, with their empty eyes and mechanical movements. She thought about species after species choosing survival over freedom, only to discover they had given up everything that made survival worthwhile. How long do we have to decide? She asked. Your people have already decided, haven't they? Zix said. You knew before you came here what the answer would be. Elena nodded slowly. Humans would rather die free than live as slaves. So be it. Zix turned away from her. The Council will act to protect galactic stability. You have 7 of your days to evacuate any civilians who wish to be spared the coming correction. What about me? Zix looked back at her with eyes like chips of ice. Diplomatic immunity protects you while you remain here. After that, he shrugged. Accidents happen to those who travel in dangerous space. The platform began to lower. Elena's mind raced. 7 days wasn't enough time for Earth to prepare defenses against technology they barely understood. 7 days wasn't enough time to evacuate 3 billion people. 7 days wasn't enough time for anything except to die bravely. Unless there was another way. As she walked back to her quarters, Elena began to plan. The Council thought they knew everything about humans. They thought they had calculated every possible response. They were about to discover that humans had a talent for changing the rules of the game. Elena had 3 days left when the invitation arrived. Elegant script on crystalline paper requested her presence at a diplomatic dinner. A final gesture of respect, the message said, before unfortunate necessity demands action. She knew it was a trap. But she also knew it might be her only chance to do what she had been planning since her first day on the Nexus. For weeks, Elena had been placing tiny recording devices throughout the station. Human technology was crude by Council standards, which made it nearly invisible to their advanced security systems. The devices were so simple they registered as background static on most scans. Now she activated them all with a thought, using the neural transmitter hidden in her dental work. Every word spoken in the major chambers would be broadcast to a hidden relay she had built into her quarters. From there, the signal would bounce to the human freighter waiting 3 systems away. If she was going to die tonight, at least her death would serve a purpose. Elena dressed carefully for the dinner. She chose her best formal clothing, a simple black dress with the insignia of Earth sewn over her heart. She pinned her grandmother's earrings to her ears and her father's watch to her wrist. If humans were going to see their ambassador die, she wanted to look like someone they could be proud of. The dining hall was smaller than the Great Chamber, but even more impressive. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that showed swirling nebulae and distant stars. The table was carved from a single piece of what looked like fossilized wood from some long-dead world. Only 12 beings sat around the table. Elena recognized most of them, the highest-ranking members of the council. High Commander Zix sat directly across from her, his crystal growths dim in the soft light. To his right sat Counselor Vex Prime, a creature that looked like a walking tree made of silver. To his left was Admiral Korath, whose species had given up their names when they joined the council. Ambassador Vasquez, Zix said as Elena took her seat. Thank you for joining us on this melancholy occasion. Thank you for inviting me, Elena replied politely, though I have to wonder why you're bothering with formalities. Counselor Vex Prime made a rustling sound that might have been laughter. Even executions deserve proper ceremony. We are not barbarians. No, Elena agreed. Barbarians kill in anger. You kill with planning. The first course arrived, something that looked like flowers floating in liquid light. Elena tasted it carefully. It was actually quite good, though she couldn't identify any of the flavors. Tell me, Admiral Korath said, speaking through a mechanical voice box. Do you regret your choice? Which choice? To condemn your species to extinction, rather than accept improvement. Elena set down her utensil. I didn't condemn anyone to anything. I just refused to sign their death warrant myself. Death warrant? Zix tilted his head. We offered eternal peace. You offered eternal emptiness. There's a difference. The conversation continued through several more courses. Elena found herself oddly enjoying the discussion. These beings had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, and they genuinely believed they were doing good. They spoke about peace and order and progress as if they were religious concepts. You must understand, Vex Prime said as servants brought the main course. Chaos is the enemy of civilization. Your species represents pure chaos. You create random art, unpredictable science, illogical philosophies. You cannot be allowed to spread such disorder. And yet, Elena said, our disorder created music that makes people cry with joy. Our chaos discovered new laws of physics. Our illogic produced poetry that touches the soul. Inefficient, Korath stated. Emotion is a weakness, wonder is a distraction. Beauty serves no practical purpose. Elena looked around the magnificent dining hall. Then why is this room beautiful? Why not just eat in a gray box? The question seemed to surprise them. They looked at each other uncertainly. Aesthetics serve diplomatic purposes, Zix said finally. You mean they make you feel something? Elena said. Even you can't escape emotion entirely. We have evolved beyond such primitive responses, Vex Prime insisted, but the rustling of its leaves suggested otherwise. The final course arrived, something that tasted like honey mixed with starlight. Elena ate slowly, knowing it was probably her last meal. Around the table, the council members began to relax. Their conversation became more honest. The human colonies will require special attention, Korath said. Their technology is more advanced than we initially calculated. Nothing we cannot handle, Zix replied. Our fleets are already moving into position. Elena's heart clenched, but she kept her expression neutral. Planning to attack civilian settlements? Planning to remove a threat before it spreads. Vex Prime corrected. Your outer colonies have been developing interesting weapons. Crude but innovative. We will preserve some specimens for study, Korath added. The children especially. They can be properly educated. Elena's hands trembled slightly. She forced them to be still. How kind of you. We take no pleasure in this, Zix said, though his crystal growth seemed to pulse with satisfaction. But sometimes the strong must make difficult decisions to protect the weak. Is that what you tell yourselves? That you're protecting people by enslaving them? We are protecting the galaxy from chaos, Vex Prime said firmly. Your species would have destroyed itself within a few centuries anyway. This way, something useful remains. Elena stood up slowly. Around the table, the council members watched her with interest rather than concern. They knew she had no weapons, no way to hurt them. "Before you kill me," she said calmly, "I want to tell you a story." "How so quaint," Zix said. "Very well, tell your story." Elena walked to the crystal wall and placed her hand against its cool surface. Through it, she could see stars spinning in their ancient dance. "Once upon a time," she began, "there was a species that loved order above all things. They built perfect cities and perfect lives and perfect minds. They removed every source of chaos from their existence." She turned back to face the table. "They became the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They conquered world after world, bringing their perfect order everywhere they went. They were proud of their accomplishments." The council members listened politely, though some seemed amused by the primitive human custom of storytelling. "But after thousands of years," Elena continued, "they realized something was wrong. Their perfect order had become perfect stagnation. They had eliminated chaos so completely that they had also eliminated growth, change, discovery. They had created eternal peace by creating eternal death." Elena walked back to her chair but didn't sit down. And when they finally understood what they had done, it was too late. They had forgotten how to dream, how to hope, how to become something new. They could only repeat the same patterns forever, ruling over an empty galaxy that would never surprise them again. Silence filled the room. Then Zix began to laugh, a sound like crystal chimes in a winter wind. "A charming tale," he said, "but we are quite satisfied with our accomplishments." "Are you?" Elena asked. "When was the last time any of you felt wonder? When did you last see something that made you gasp with surprise? When did you last grow? As individuals?" "Growth is overrated," Korath said. "Perfection cannot be improved upon." "Perfection cannot be anything but dead," Elena replied. She felt a strange tingling in her fingers and recognized the sign immediately. The poison was beginning to work. They had been more subtle than she expected. It must have been in the honey. Dessert. Elena sat down carefully and looked around the table one last time. "I have one more thing to say." "Speak quickly," Zix advised. "The toxin works faster in some species than others." Elena smiled. "I forgive you." The words seemed to hit the council members like physical blows. Several of them actually stepped back. "You... what?" Bex Prime whispered. "I forgive you," Elena repeated. "You've forgotten how to be anything but afraid. Fear of chaos. Fear of change. Fear of losing control. You've built this whole empire on fear and now you're too frightened to let it go." Her vision was beginning to blur, but she continued speaking. "I feel sorry for you. You've had 10,000 years to explore the universe, and instead you've spent them building a cage." Zix's crystals blazed with angry light. "We do not need your pity, human." "Everyone needs pity," Elena said softly. "Everyone needs forgiveness. Everyone needs love. That's what makes us alive instead of just functional." She slumped forward in her chair, her strength fading fast. Around the table, the council members watched in uncomfortable silence. "Your species will join you in death soon enough," Korath said finally. Elena raised her head one last time. Her eyes were growing dim, but her voice was still strong. "My species will surprise you. We always do." She smiled one final time and closed her eyes. 3 systems away, a human freighter captain named Martinez watched the recording with tears streaming down his face. The transmission had been broadcasting for 2 hours, showing the galaxy exactly who the council really was. Martinez opened a communication channel to Earth. "Command, this is Merchant 7. The package has been delivered. Repeat, the package has been delivered." Within minutes, every human settlement in the galaxy received the transmission. Within hours, it was being rebroadcast to every species the humans had ever contacted. Elena Vasquez was dead, but her words would echo across the stars forever. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the battleship Defiance, watching the holographic display that showed every human settlement in the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations where council fleets were gathering. There were so many red dots that the display looked like it was bleeding. "Ma'am," her communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving the final transmission from Ambassador Vasquez." Sarah had already watched Elena's death 3 times. Each viewing made her angrier and more determined. Around her, the bridge crew worked with grim efficiency. They all knew what was coming. "Status report," Sarah commanded. 14 human colonies are under direct threat, her tactical officer replied. "Council fleets are moving into attack positions. They'll be in range within 6 hours. Our fleet positions? All available ships are moving to intercept. But Admiral," the officer hesitated, "we're outnumbered 50-1. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." Sarah smiled coldly. "Their technology is predictable. Ours is not." She had spent the last 3 weeks since Elena's arrival at the Nexus preparing for this moment. While the Council planned their perfect military response, humans had done what humans did best. They improvised. "Open a channel to all human vessels," Sarah ordered. The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Sarah looked into the camera that would carry her words to every human ship in space. "This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. By now you've all seen what happened to Ambassador Vasquez. You know what the Council plans to do to our people." She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "They expect us to run or surrender. They think we'll scatter like frightened animals or beg for mercy like their other victims. They're about to learn something new about humanity." On her tactical display, more human ships appeared as captains brought their vessels out of hiding. Merchants became warriors. Passenger liners became troop transports. Mining ships became improvised weapons platforms. "The Council believes in superior firepower and perfect tactics," Sarah continued. "We believe in something else. We believe that freedom is worth dying for. We believe that chaos can defeat order. We believe that David can still beat Goliath if David is crazy enough to try." Across the galaxy, in dozens of different star systems, human crews listened to their admiral and prepared for the impossible. "They want to see what human warfare looks like," Sarah said. "Let's show them." The first battle began at the Kepler colony, where 30,000 humans had built farms and factories around a yellow star. Council ships appeared in perfect formation, sleek silver crescents that moved like schools of fish through space. The human defenders had only 6 vessels, all of them converted civilian craft. By every reasonable calculation, they should have been destroyed in minutes. Instead, they disappeared. The Council fleet fired their energy weapons at empty space, while human ships ghosted through asteroid fields and gas clouds, using every piece of debris as cover. When they attacked, it was from directions the Council hadn't expected, using weapons that shouldn't have worked. Captain Rodriguez of the mining vessel Asteroid Queen had filled his cargo holds with processed metals and turned his ship into a giant shotgun. When he fired, clouds of metallic fragments spread out at relativistic speeds, shredding Council shields designed to stop focused energy beams. Captain Wu of the transport New Shanghai had installed every thruster she could find on her ship and turned it into a missile. She accelerated toward the Council flagship at maximum burn, then ejected in an escape pod while her unmanned ship smashed through the enemy's perfect formation. The Council won the battle, but it took them 3 hours instead of 3 minutes. Half their fleet was damaged. Most importantly, they had learned that human tactics couldn't be predicted by their computers. Similar scenes played out across human space. At the Mars mining station, defenders used industrial equipment to hurl asteroids at Council ships. At New Tokyo Colony, a grandmother named Yamamoto turned her passenger liner into a weapon by filling it with concentrated antimatter and ramming a Council cruiser. Every battle ended with human defeat, but every battle cost the Council more than they had calculated. Human defenders didn't follow standard military doctrine because most of them weren't soldiers. They were farmers and miners and teachers and doctors who fought like their ancestors had fought, with anything they could find, from any position they could take using any trick they could imagine. But the real surprise came when the Council moved against Earth itself. Admiral Sarah Chen had been waiting for them. The planet was defended by humanity's most advanced fleet, 200 warships that Earth had spent decades building in secret. The Council expected these ships to be larger versions of the crude vessels they had already encountered. Instead, they found something unprecedented. Human military science had taken a different path than Council technology. Where the Council sought perfection and predictability, humans had embraced controlled chaos. Their ships were ugly, asymmetrical, and completely unpredictable. The Defiance itself looked like it had been assembled from spare parts by someone who had never seen a proper spaceship. Its weapons were mounted at random angles. Its armor was patched together from different alloys. Its engines burned with uneven flames that changed color constantly. High Commander Zix, leading the Council fleet personally, studied the human formation, with growing confusion. What are those vessels supposed to be? Unknown design principles, his tactical officer reported. Their energy signatures are chaotic. I cannot predict their movement patterns. Fire on the flagship, Zix ordered. Demonstrate our superiority. The Council ships opened fire with precisely focused energy beams that should have vaporized any target. Instead, the beams struck the Defiance and scattered in random directions. Some reflected harmlessly into space. Others split into smaller beams that struck other Council ships. Impossible, Zix whispered. Admiral Chen smiled as reports came in from her engineering crew. The adaptive armor was working perfectly. Instead of trying to stop enemy fire, it redirected it randomly. No, 2 hits would behave the same way. Return fire, she ordered. The human fleet opened fire with weapons that defied classification. Some shot streams of metallic slugs. Others fired beams of coherent plasma. A few launched what appeared to be garbage that exploded into clouds of smart projectiles. The Council formation, so perfect and coordinated, became a weakness as human weapons found unexpected angles of attack. Ships designed to work together perfectly couldn't adapt when their formations were broken by attacks from impossible directions. But the battle's real turning point came when Sarah implemented Elena's final gift. Throughout the fight, the Defiance had been broadcasting. Not battle communications or propaganda, but something much simpler. It was broadcasting Elena's last words, along with every recording she had made of Council meetings. The transmissions reached more than just human settlements. They reached every species in the galaxy that had communication equipment. For the first time in thousands of years, the ruled heard the truth about their rulers. On a dozen worlds, species that had been elevated by the Council began to remember what they had lost. On 100 more, civilizations that had never seen, humans before learned what defiance looked like. The uprising began slowly. A few sabotaged power systems here, some damaged communication relays there, but it spread like wildfire as the galaxy realized that the Council could be beaten. High Commander Zix watched his tactical display as red warnings appeared throughout his territory. Rebellions were breaking out on dozens of worlds simultaneously. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender demands from the human fleet. Surrender demands? Zix's crystals blazed with fury. They're outnumbered 10-1. But as he looked at his display, Zix realized the numbers had changed. His fleet was taking casualties from weapons that behaved unpredictably. His formations were broken. His ships were scattered across the system, trying to deal with human vessels that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. And behind him, his empire was falling apart. As species after species chose chaos over order, Sarah Chen appeared on his communication screen, her face calm despite the battle raging around her. High Commander, she said politely, I believe it's time for you to surrender. Humans do not dictate terms to the Council, Zix replied. Today they do, Sarah said. You have 2 choices. Surrender now and face trial for your crimes, or continue fighting and watch your empire collapse around you. Zix looked at his tactical display one more time. Half his fleet was gone. The other half was scattered and demoralized. Behind him, rebellions were spreading faster than he could track. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Galactic Council faced the possibility of defeat. What are your terms? He asked quietly. Sarah's smile was as cold as space itself. Unconditional surrender. release of all enslaved species, dissolution of the council, and a new government based on species equality. And if we refuse? Then we keep fighting until there's nothing left of your empire but empty space. Zix studied the human admiral for a long moment. He saw no doubt in her eyes, no fear, no hesitation. She meant every word. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. In the distance, human ships continued their impossible dance of battle, winning through chaos. 2 years after the Council's surrender, the old galactic nexus had been transformed into something no one could have imagined. The crystal spires still reached toward the stars, but now they hummed with different voices, spoke in languages that had been silent for centuries, and rang with sounds that had been forbidden for millennia. Dr. Marcus Webb, Elena Vasquez's former aide, walked through corridors that now showed the chaotic beauty of a truly free society. The walls that had once displayed perfect geometric patterns now featured art from hundreds of worlds, paintings that made no sense, sculptures that defied logic, music that touched parts of the soul the Council had tried to eliminate. Today marked the second anniversary of what historians were already calling the Great Liberation. It was also the day they would formally establish the new government that Elena had died to make possible. Marcus paused at a memorial wall where Elena's image smiled down at passing beings. Dozens of species he had never seen before stopped to leave flowers, crystals, songs, or simple words of thanks. Elena had become more than a human hero. She had become a symbol of hope for everyone who had ever dreamed of freedom. She would have loved this chaos, said a familiar voice behind him. Marcus turned to see Admiral Sarah Chen approaching. The hero of Earth's defense looked older now, worn down by 2 years of negotiations, trials, and the massive effort of rebuilding galactic civilization. She always said humans were too unpredictable for their own good, Marcus replied. I don't think she knew how right she was. They walked together toward the great chamber where the new Galactic Assembly was preparing to meet. The space had been completely redesigned. Instead of the old council's perfect circle of floating seats, the chamber now featured a chaotic arrangement of platforms, pods, and spaces designed for beings of every shape and size imaginable. Any word from the outer territories? Marcus asked. Sarah nodded grimly. The Zephyrian Empire is still causing problems. Zix may have surrendered, but plenty of his people haven't accepted the new order. We've got 3 minor wars and about 50 territorial disputes, but no genocides, no forced relocations, no elevation programs. No, Sarah agreed. No more slavery, even if we call it by prettier names. They entered the chamber to find it already filled with representatives from over 200 species. The noise was incredible. A mixture of voices, musical tones, chemical signals, and electromagnetic pulses that somehow managed to be communication instead of chaos. Marcus spotted Keth 9 in the crowd. Elena's former guide had become one of the most effective advocates for species that were still recovering from council improvements. His people were slowly learning to dream again, though progress was sometimes painful. The assembly recognizes the representative from the Karani worlds, announced the session moderator. A human named President Martinez who had been elected by popular vote from across the galaxy. The blue creature that stood to speak looked different from the empty shells Marcus had seen 2 years ago. This one's eyes held sparks of curiosity, hints of individual thought. I have prepared a statement, the Karani said, struggling with personal pronouns that their species hadn't used in centuries. My people are learning to be individuals again. It is difficult. Sometimes we do not know what to think when the council's programming fails. The creature paused, seeming to gather courage. But yesterday, one of our youngsters asked a question we had never heard before. She asked why flowers are beautiful. We realized we had forgotten how to wonder about beauty. A ripple of sound moved through the chamber, applause, cheers, and other expressions of support from dozens of species. We are still healing, the Karani continued. But we are healing. We wish to thank the humans who showed us that healing was possible. Marcus felt tears in his eyes. Around the chamber he could see similar scenes playing out. Species that had been silent for generations were learning to speak. Civilizations that had been frozen in perfect order were discovering the joy of growth and change. But not everyone was celebrating. In a secured section of the chamber, surrounded by force fields and guards, sat the surviving members of the old council. They were here to face justice, but they were also here to witness what their galaxy had become without them. High Commander Zix looked older. His crystal growths dimmed and cracked. The defeat had broken something inside him, but not his conviction that he had been right. "This is madness," he whispered to Admiral Korath, who sat beside him in his mechanical chair. "Look at them. Chaos everywhere. No order, no efficiency, no purpose." Korath's mechanical voice was quieter than before, damaged during the final battle. Perhaps purpose was not ours to dictate." Zix stared at his former ally. "You cannot mean that. Look what we accomplished. 10,000 years of peace. 10,000 years of death," Korath corrected. "Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of justice." Across the chamber, President Martinez was calling for the formal establishment of the new government. The vote was conducted in dozens of different ways. Some species used voice calls, others changed colors, still others released chemical signals into the air. The result was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, a government existed that served the will of its people instead of the ambitions of its rulers. Marcus watched the celebration that followed with mixed emotions. Elena should have been here to see this. She should have been the one giving speeches and cutting ribbons and accepting thanks from grateful species. Instead, she was a memory and a symbol, more powerful in death than she could have been in life. "She knew, didn't she?" Sarah asked, as if reading his thoughts. "Knew what?" "That she was going to die. That the recording devices were her real weapon, not her words." Marcus nodded slowly. "Elena always said the best way to win a war was to make your enemy defeat themselves. The council spent so much energy maintaining their image of benevolent rulers that they couldn't survive having their true nature exposed. And now?" Marcus looked around the chamber at the controlled chaos of democracy in action. "Now we find out if freedom actually works better than tyranny." The answer came sooner than anyone expected. Within months of the new government's establishment, scientific breakthroughs began appearing across the galaxy. Species that had been locked into rigid roles suddenly found themselves free to explore new ideas. Art and music flourished. Trade increased. Population growth accelerated as beings rediscovered the joy of creating families instead of just maintaining population quotas. But the real proof came when the galaxy faced its first crisis under the new system. A massive asteroid was discovered, heading toward the Centauri colonies, one of the most heavily populated regions in human space. Under the old council system, evacuation would have been orderly and efficient, but millions would have died simply because there weren't enough ships to save everyone. Instead, what happened defied all predictions. Species from across the galaxy volunteered their ships for the evacuation effort. Engineers from a dozen different civilizations worked together to design deflector systems. Scientists who had been forbidden to collaborate for centuries shared their knowledge freely. The asteroid was deflected harmlessly into empty space, and not a single life was lost. High Commander Zix, watching the news from his prison cell, finally understood what humans had been trying to tell him. Order wasn't strength, it was brittleness. Chaos wasn't weakness, it was adaptability. The galaxy didn't need perfect rulers. It needed the freedom to solve its own problems. 3 years after Elena's death, Marcus stood again before her memorial. But now he wasn't alone. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds had come to the Nexus for the anniversary celebration. They came not just to remember Elena, but to celebrate what her sacrifice had made possible. A small human girl, one of the first generation born in the free galaxy, tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Mister," she said, "why did the lady have to die?" Marcus knelt down to look the child in the eyes. Around them, the celebration continued. Chaotic, noisy, inefficient, and absolutely beautiful. "Because sometimes," he said gently, "someone has to show everyone else that freedom is worth dying for. so that people like you never have to make that choice." The girl nodded solemnly, then ran off to play with friends from a dozen different species. Their laughter echoed through the corridors of the Nexus, filling spaces that had been silent for far too long. Elena Vasquez had died to save humanity. But in saving humanity, she had saved the galaxy itself. And in a universe where beings were finally free to become whatever they dreamed of being, that was a legacy that would never be forgotten. The galaxy had awakened from its long sleep of perfect order. It would never sleep again.